December 1976. James Elwyn, a 34-year-old maritime engineer from Edinburgh, had seen his fair share of dangerous work, storms, shipwrecks, rusted sea towers, but nothing prepared him for Driftmoor Lighthouse. The structure, perched atop a jagged cliff on the northern coast of Scotland, had been abandoned for over 4 decades. Since 1936, to be exact. The Year 3 lighthouse keepers vanished without explanation. When James received the assignment to evaluate its condition, he was intrigued. An isolated tower, untouched for years, sounded like a straightforward inspection job. Yet the villagers down the coast gave him sideways glances. Some refused to speak of the place. Others whispered superstitions. That tower doesn't want visitors. James dismissed the stories as local lore. He packed a week's worth of supplies, tools, a shortwave radio, and boarded a supply boat. As the boat approached Driftmoor, the lighthouse emerged through the fog like a forgotten relic of time. Weather-beaten but intact, its silhouette loomed over crashing waves and wind-swept cliffs. As James stepped ashore, a strange weight settled in his chest. The boatman simply nodded and turned back without a word. The lighthouse door creaked open too easily, and stale, cold air greeted him like a breath from the grave. Inside, everything was frozen in time. Dust-covered furniture, rusted lanterns, personal items left behind. Cups on the table, a shaving kit, worn boots by the bed. As if the keepers had left mid-task. James began his work with clinical detachment, unaware that the lighthouse had already begun watching him. The first night brought an eerie silence, not just the absence of sound, but the kind of quiet that pressed against your ears. James set up his equipment in the keeper's room and reviewed the lighthouse blueprints by lantern light. Outside, the wind howled, yet inside it felt unnaturally still. Around midnight, James awoke to faint noises, a whisper, then another. Not wind, not waves, voices, soft, unintelligible, and close. He sat up, holding his breath. The whispers stopped, then resumed again. This time behind the door. James flung it open. Empty hallway. He checked the rooms one by one. Nothing. He tried to rationalize it. Acoustic tricks? His imagination? But when he returned to his room, something caught his eye. Deep, vertical scratch marks on the wall near his bed. 4 gashes, fresh, cutting through layers of dust and paint. He hadn't seen them earlier. Something was wrong, but he pushed the thought away. Daylight brought no comfort. James began exploring the upper levels, documenting corrosion, structure fatigue, and damage. In the lantern room, he discovered a loose floorboard. Beneath it lay a leather-bound journal, damp, moldy, but still legible. It belonged to Harold McCrae, the last head keeper of Driftmoor. James flipped through the pages. The early entries were routine, log rotations, maintenance notes, weather records. But by March 1936, the tone shifted. Miller claims he saw someone outside last night, climbing the cliffs, naked, eyes glowing. Bell rings at night. No ship, wind dead calm. I heard the voice again. It said my name. Light spins on its own now. We've stopped touching it. Don't think it matters anymore. James's hands trembled as he read the final entry. April 6th. The whispers are louder. The water below speaks. The thing beneath stirs. It wants 3. If someone finds this, do not stay past the 3rd night. Not alone. Never alone. James closed the journal, sweat forming on his brow. Was this madness or a warning? The third night came fast. James tried to stay awake, distracting himself with reports and readings. But as the clock neared midnight, the generator died, instantly, as if cut. No wind, no waves, silence again. Then the knocking began. 3 knocks from the inside of the stone wall. He backed away. Another knock, closer. James grabbed his flashlight and bolted upstairs. In the lantern room, the light was spinning on its own. The same light that was no longer connected to any power source. Then he saw it. Reflected in the lantern glass were 3 figures behind him, soaked in seawater, faces pale and bloated, their eyes lifeless. One pointed to the floor. James turned slowly. There, beneath the glass dome, was a large Celtic symbol carved into the floor. It pulsed with a faint blue glow, the same shape sketched in McCrae's journal. James collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed with fear. Without thinking, he began praying aloud. His voice cracked. He wept. The room grew warmer. The whispering stopped. The 3 figures stood still. Then they nodded, once, and vanished. After the vision, James sat for hours in the lantern room, unable to move. His mind echoed with what he'd seen. The keepers going mad, dragged into the sea, sacrificed to keep something beneath the lighthouse sealed. The structure wasn't a beacon, it was a prison. A seal built atop a rift. The light served not just ships, but something deeper. It kept the darkness asleep. Each generation required 3 keepers to maintain the light and, unknowingly, reinforce the barrier. James, alone and unaware, had unknowingly become the 3rd. His prayer, his fear, his presence, somehow it had strengthened the seal again. For now, he stood and looked out toward the sea. Calm, silent. James awoke at sunrise to birds chirping and warm light spilling across the floorboards. The generator was humming softly. The air felt clean. He rushed downstairs. The claw marks, gone. The journal, vanished. The blueprints, intact. But the front door had changed. Newly carved, delicately and deeply, were 2 words, "Thank you." When the supply boat returned that afternoon, James said nothing of what happened. He filed his report, claimed the structure was stable but not worth restoring. He quit engineering the next month. Years later, tourists took photos of the restored lighthouse. In dozens of images taken near sunset, 3 figures could be seen standing in the lantern room. Faint, transparent, watching the sea, smiling.